Madhavam Shri Caitanya Ishwaram Katanchana Smrite Yasmin Dushkaram Sukaram Bhavet Vismrite Viparitam Syat Shri Caitanyam Namamitam. Okay, Rudradeep Nimai Prabhu, could you kindly share screen? Any volunteers to read today?
If nobody is there, Prabhu, I can read Prabhu Krishna Prabhu.
Okay, all right, sure.
I think yes. We have to start from the next morning, Prabhu. The next morning from here, okay. The next morning, Srila Prabhupada rode to Loyola Park for his morning walk. On the way, one of the devotees read aloud the news article from that morning's edition of the Chicago Tribune. Forgive me if this story is not well written, the article began. I am a woman, the article continued. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the 77-year-old founder of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, said so Wednesday. The society is dedicated to peace in the world through love of God and relinquishment of all things material. The Swami spoke, seated cross-legged on an expensive-looking cushion surrounded by fresh flowers, microphones, and burning incense in the conference room he rented at the Sheraton Chicago Hotel. He is in town for a Krishna parade at 1:30 p.m. Saturday down State Street, in which he will ride on a flower-bedded float. Then he will fly to Philadelphia for more celebration and philosophical chats. He looked occasionally at his gold watch as he explained his life philosophy. His adoring disciples, 5 men, knelt at his side. The article continued, implying that Srila Prabhupada was a male chauvinist. He said, women do not figure in his class system except as daughters or wives. An unmarried woman is presumably classless. Srila Prabhupada chuckled in the back seat of the car and remarked, that's a fact. She is
Mother, your voice is trailed.
Okay, Prabhu. Now is it okay, Prabhu?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. That's a fact. She's a prostitute. That's all. If you classify, then she is prostitute. There is no other way. The devotee continued reading. The Swami now lives in Los Angeles and he trains his followers there. Their income is from sales of his books, magazines, and incense. He says he has about 10,000 followers. We do not have so many, he said. It's hard to find a first-class man. It's a pity. Half the population are women. So it is not bad, said Prabhupada. And he offered his own positive proposal for women in Krishna consciousness. Our policy should be that at Dallas Gurukula, we shall create first-class men. And we shall teach the girls 2 things, how to become chaste and faithful to their husband and how to cook nicely. If they have these 2 qualifications, then I will take a guarantee to get them a good husband. So try to do that. At the park, Prabhupada was joined by several carloads of devotees, followed closely by a dozen eager disciples. He proceeded down a path that ran among many tall shade trees along the shore of Lake Michigan. Since the walkway was wide enough for only a few devotees to walk abreast, most of the devotees fanned out onto the grass, trying to keep within hearing distance of Srila Prabhupada. Ordinary education is sufficient, Prabhupada was saying. ABCD. This is nonsense. Big education. And then later on, become a prostitute. To make them prostitute doesn't require education. So in Dallas Gurukula, there is no problem. Educate the girls how to become faithful, chaste wife, how to cook nicely. Let them learn varieties of cooking. Is it very difficult? These two qualifications? There are many stories such as of Damayanti, Parvati, Sita, great women in the history. Our girls should read their lives, and by 15 and 16 years, they should be married. If they are qualified, it will not be difficult to find out a nice husband. If a woman is chaste, even though she is not very beautiful, she will be liked by her husband. So train them in that way. Before starting back, Srila Prabhupada stopped and suggested they all sit together on the grass. A disciple volunteered his wool chadar as a seat for Prabhupada, and the devotees all sat down, facing their spiritual master. Special, unexpected occasions like this made them blissful, and the opinions of a TV news reporter or the Chicago Tribune seemed remote and unimportant. The devotees often wished such persons could be present at times like these to see that Srila Prabhupada was not at all like they thought. Srila Prabhupada began discussing the proper relations between men and women. Women and men should live separately, he said. That is also essential. Butter and fire must be kept apart. Otherwise, the butter will melt. You cannot stop it. Devotee. Srila Prabhupada, in a purport in the Srimad Bhagavatam, you say that even 50 years ago in India, the householders had separate quarters in the apartment for men and women, and the husband would not see his wife during the day. Is this the standard we should develop in our movement? Prabhupada. Yes, that's good. The example is that butter and fire should be kept as far apart as possible. Otherwise, the butter will melt. The man is butter and the woman is fire. So this is restricted, even if the man happens to be father, brother, or son. Matra swasra duhitra va. One may say that people will not think of sex impulse in the presence of a daughter, mother, or sister. But the Shastra says no, there is possibility. So they should not sit together. People may say this is only advice for the 10th class rascal. But the next line of the Shastra says no. Vidvasam api karshati. It is not the question of the 10th class rascal, but even first class learned he may be attracted. Balavan indriya gramo vidvamsam api karshati. The senses are so strong that they can mislead even the most learned scholar. Lord Brahma was attracted to his daughter. Just see. There is the example. Lord Shiva was attracted by the Mohini Murti. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, even if I see a wooden woman, I become attracted. Prabhupada laughed. He is giving this information to teach us that it is possible. So shall we go now? Returning in the car, Prabhupada asked for news of Indira Gandhi and India. Some of her policies had become highly controversial, and political opposition to her was mounting. The latest news was of her emergency rule. If Indira Gandhi takes my advice, Prabhupada said, then I can keep her on the post and she can do greater service to India. Immediately, the whole public will give her support. What would your advice to her be? Asked Brahmananda Swami. My first step, said Prabhupada, will be to capture all the hoarders and distribute the grains free. Immediately, the public will be obliged to her. There are immense amounts of food grains and they are simply hoarded. They are not selling without good price. This is going on. Immediately, she can win the public. Some of the hoarders should be hanged so that in the future, nobody will hoard. People are hungry, and she says she has got some program to drive away the poverty. This is the point. If she can supply all consumer goods free to the poor for the time being, then immediately the whole population will like her, and the hoarders should be exemplarily punished. then nobody will hold. But to remain the leader, she requires spiritual knowledge. Otherwise, it will be another disaster. If she wants to remain leader, then she must be a spiritual person. She must become a Vaishnavi. Philadelphia, July 11, 1975. Prabhupada's receptions were usually large, spontaneous turnouts. The temple population would increase greatly just before his arrival in a city, as devotees from other centers converged. Except for a handful of disciples, the women preparing Prabhupada's meal, the men laying down the last tiles in his room, or working on the Rath Yatra cart, everyone would go to the airport to greet him. At the airport, Srila Prabhupada was accustomed to much fanfare, the rhythmic crash of hand cymbals, the beating of mridangas, and the chanting chorus of 100 or more happy devotees. Only if they became wild or disruptive would he object. Otherwise, as Krishna's representative, he would be pleased to see an enthusiastic reception. As he collected flowers and obeisances, like a viceroy accepting tribute on behalf of the king. By his grace, the praise and worship was going directly to Krishna. Thus, in Philadelphia, as at almost every airport reception, Srila Prabhupada felt satisfied. With loving glances, he acknowledged the familiar faces of his spiritual sons and daughters. Devotees stepped forward to place flag garlands around his neck, and the reporters also stepped forward with cameras, microphones, and notepads. They had not come to offer Prabhupada devotional praise, and yet they also appeared to be serving him by offering him the opportunity to preach. A woman reporter asked, "It has been said that the Krishna conscious movement is what some people consider sexist or racist, because certain propensities for women and for blacks have been defined either by the devotees or the Vedic scriptures. I wonder if you could comment on that." She had spoken rapidly, and Ramananda Swami repeated for Srila Prabhupada. She says, "You give inferior roles to women and Negroes." Prabhupada, "We give equal roles spiritually. Materially, one man is servant, one man is master. How can you avoid this? Do you think everyone will be master? No one will be servant. Materially, one is father, one is son. One is master, one is servant. One is man, one is woman. How can you stop this? But spiritually, they are all equal." Here was the same news theme that had begun in Chicago, and here came the same challenges. Reporter, "So what is happening materially is unimportant?" Prabhupada, "Materially, there is distinction. But when you come to the spiritual platform, then when you discern the spirit soul within everything, that is equal. Like you are differently dressed in a red shirt and I am differently dressed. This difference must be there. There are so many men and women and they are differently dressed. You cannot say they are all equal by the dress. But within the dress, the living entities, they are the same. We make this distinction materially, but not spiritually. I would like to ask one question," said another reporter. "What is it that you are offering that has resulted in such an emotional response from all the people here?" Prabhupada, "Because they are being spiritually educated. We are above the material platform. Therefore, we have no distinction that one is American, one is Indian, one is black, one is white. There is no such distinction. Everyone is servant of God. Is that all right?" Another reporter mentioned that there were many gurus and asked why Prabhupada thought his teaching was the truth. Prabhupada, "Because we speak the truth. We don't give bluff saying I am God. We know the actual position, that God is great and we are all servants." The question had been asked in the typical reporter's attitude of irreverent interrogation. But Prabhupada was replying soberly. reflecting on his own position in relation to Krishna. How can I say I am God? He asked, and he lowered his head. No, we do not give bluff. We say the real truth. Therefore, it appeals. If I say something humbug, it may act for some time, but it will not endure. Reporter, your celebration is tomorrow. Of what will that celebration consist? Prabhupada, celebration is it is remembering Krishna or the Lord. He with his brother and sister visited Kurukshetra, a place in India. So in memory of that visit, we observe this Ratha Yatra. Srila Prabhupada got into the rented Cadillac limousine along with Kirtanananda Swami, Brahmananda Swami, and Ravindra Swarupa, the Philadelphia temple president. So again, the same question was raised, said Prabhupada. So reply was all right? Yes, said Brahmananda. It was very nice. Prabhupada. Materially, there is distinction. You are differently dressed, I am differently dressed. But spiritually, there is no distinction. The chauffeur glanced to the back seat. If you want any more air in the back, there is a control over there. We can put on the air conditioner, Srila Prabhupada, said Brahmananda. Oh, all right, said Prabhupada. But sky condition is better. They opened the windows. Prabhupada recalled that he had been to Philadelphia twice before. In 1969, he had come from New York City with some devotees to lecture at Temple University. And back in 1965, after leaving Butler, Pennsylvania, he had come to the University of Pennsylvania for a meeting with Professor Norman Brown. Ravindra Swarupa told how he had been a student at Temple University and had enrolled in Swami Nikhilananda's class a year after Srila Prabhupada had spoken there. Ravindra Swarupa. The students remembered you. They told me you had asked Swami Nikhilananda. So you are studying Vedanta? But what is Vedanta? And no one knew. Then you said that Veda means knowledge and Anta means end. So Vedanta means end of knowledge, and that is Krishna. They had never heard that before, even though they had so many hours of courses in Vedanta. Prabhupada. That is the difficulty. Those who are foolish people are taking the leading part. One who has no knowledge is taking the part of a teacher. Just like this, one does not know what is Vedanta and he is reading Vedanta. It is a very simple truth. Veda means knowledge and Anta means end. There must be some ultimate goal. But the modern process is that we go on unlimitedly, but we never come to the end. Is it not like that? What do you think, Ravindra Swarupa? Yes, it's a fact, no conclusion. They pass a large junkyard filled with scrap automobiles, motor car, Prabhupada said. Kirtanananda, that is the end of their knowledge, a pile of junk. Prabhupada, yes, their time is spent in breaking and building, that's all. They do not inquire, why breaking and building? Why not permanent? That question does not arise, and they cannot solve it. They think this breaking and building is the nature, but we are giving information of another nature where there is no breaking and building, permanent. But they cannot believe that there is such a thing. We are giving that information, how you can keep yourself eternal. This is the greatest gift to the human society. He wants to live eternally, but he doesn't know how to live eternally. His energy is being spoiled by the skyscraper building construction, but he is not very serious to construct his body eternal. We are speaking this in our meetings everywhere, but they have no brain to understand. They rode around the sharply winding curves alongside the Schuylkill River, passing Fairmount Park, the devotees pointed out to Prabhupada that it contained 1,000 acres of forest land. Prabhupada asked Kirtanananda Swami how far it was to New Vrindavan, and they began talking. When Prabhupada asked about the grihasthas there, Kirtanananda replied, "We are developing very nice householder couples at New Vrindavan, very good families. That is essential," said Prabhupada. The peaceful life of householders, that is required. The ISKCON center was a converted two-story house. The temple room was packed with devotees, and others filled the hallway, straining to see Prabhupada as he entered. "Thank you very much for your kind reception," said Srila Prabhupada from his seat in the temple room. The press reporters were asking me that why do we make distinction between man and woman and black and white? But we make distinction not in that way. Srila Prabhupada explained that the attempt to make everyone equal materially would be a failure always, just as the United Nations attempt at unity was a failure. Bhagavad Gita states that one with equal vision recognizes the difference between the bodies but sees all beings as one spiritually. Srila Prabhupada continued, "If we make unfair distinction between man and woman or black and white, then how in our temple are we all enjoying together? Because we are actually equal on the spiritual platform. We do not say that you are a woman, so you cannot become my disciple, or you are black, therefore you cannot become my disciple. No, we welcome everyone so that people may not misunderstand. You can just issue one statement that we say, if you want to see everyone equally, treat everyone equally, then you have to come to the spiritual platform, Krishna consciousness. Materially, it is not possible, but the aim should be one. If artificially you do not make distinction, that will not stay. Just like in your country, the blacks and the whites, they have equal rights. But why they fight sometimes? Racial fight, because it is on a material platform. Our point is that you come to the spiritual platform and then this equality will be possible. Practically, you can see here while you are chanting, dancing, the boy is dancing, the father is dancing, the black is dancing, the white is dancing, the young is dancing, the old is dancing. You can see practically everyone dancing, and they are not artificially dancing like dogs, but by spiritual ecstasy. After his talk, Prabhupada called for questions. Ravindra Swarupa, what is the best way to deal with skepticism? Prabhupada, skepticism, rascalism. Devotees laugh. We are not going to deal with rascalism. We are going to deal with sense. Skepticism, they do not believe in anything. Everything is false. They are so disappointed. They think everything is false. We are not going to deal with such men. What is the use? Is not that skepticism? What is that skepticism? Ravindra Swarupa, disappointment, that's all. Prabhupada, so why should one be disappointed? We say that you should come to the spiritual platform and you will be happy. We want to deliver him from the platform of his disappointment. Sometimes one being very disappointed commits suicide. We say, why are you disappointed? You come to the spiritual platform and you will be happy. So we are not going to accept this philosophy, skepticism, but we want to deliver him from his fallen condition. That is our mission. The living entity, the spirit soul, is by nature happy. There is no question of disappointment. You see Krishna's picture anywhere, how happy they are. The gopis are happy, the cowherd boys are happy, Krishna is happy, simply happiness. Where is disappointment? So you come to that platform and then you will also be happy. Come to Krishna, come and dance with Krishna, eat with Krishna. That is information we are giving. What is the question of disappointment? Come to Krishna. Krishna, therefore, personally comes to show how happy he is in Vrindavana. And he is inviting, come to me. Prabhupada continued his ecstatic description of happiness in Krishna consciousness and then concluded, is that all right? Many voices together answered, yes. There was no disappointment or skepticism in Srila Prabhupada's presence. Srila Prabhupada had come to Philadelphia primarily for Ratha Yatra. Since 1970, the devotees had been holding Ratha Yatra in Philadelphia, although the early festivals had been small. For the first festival, the devotees had taken small deities on procession on a decorated cigar box. They had placed the deities on an altar on the bank of the Schuylkill River and had held Kirtana while people picnic and lay around in the sunshine. The next year's festival had been a little bigger with foot-high deities riding on a palanquin. It was still not a very ambitious festival, but Srila Prabhupada had returned in appreciation. I'm so glad to hear how nicely you perform Ratha Yatra festival. Next year, you can perform the regular ceremony with the cart as we are doing in San Francisco and London. That will be very nice. It doesn't matter if you construct a small one, but you can hold a festival. Ravindra Swarupa had become temple president just after Prabhupada's letter had arrived, and he had resolved to have a real Ratha Yatra cart for 1972. So the devotees had done it. A small cart, but a cart pulled in procession down to Washington Square Park. By 1973, they had made a large cart and devotees from other cities had come to help with the festival. Again, Srila Prabhupada responded, at Rath Yatra, there must be either one or three carts. It is very good news to hear that one television station is interested to do a special program on the Rath Yatra festival. These festivals are good for showing to the people in general that Krishna consciousness is real enjoyment. Everything else is simply artificial. Your plans for Rath Yatra festival are very nice. In the summer of 1974, Ravindra Swarupa had written to Prabhupada about the preaching activities in Philadelphia and had sent photos of their Jagannatha deities. Srila Prabhupada had been moved by the pictures. I want to thank you 100 times for the excellent way you are worshipping the deity there, as I can see from the color photographs you have sent. From my childhood, I was also worshipping Lord Jagannath. When I was 6 years old, my father gave me a Ratha and I was performing the Ratha Yatra in my neighborhood. Now, in the Western world, you are worshipping Lord Jagannath so gorgeously, and it pleases me very much. Thank you again for the way you are conducting the deity worship in the Philadelphia temple. As for the Ratha Yatra ceremony, you should go on with it, and I shall attend there next year. But you go on holding a splendid ceremony for the people of the city. I am sure that it will be a success. In 1975, Srila Prabhupada had written from Denver, assuring the Philadelphia devotees, yes, I'm coming to your city on Friday morning, July 11, 1975, from Chicago. I look forward to meeting the professors. Therefore, when the devotees in Chicago had tried to convince Prabhupada to stay and attend their festival, scheduled at the same time as Philadelphia's, he had declined. Shortly after Srila Prabhupada's arrival, it began to rain all day Friday and all day Saturday. When time came for Prabhupada's morning walk and the rain was still pouring, he said, so today I will take my walk by riding. Getting into his car along with some of his sannyasis and GBC men, he set off in the rain for a ride through Fairmont Park. The rain continued on Saturday right up until the time for the Ratha Yatra parade. The parade was to start at Independence Mall, head down Walnut Street to Broad, Circle City Hall, and end on the grassy slope behind the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Prabhupada rode into the city where he was to meet the Ratha Yatra cart halfway through the procession. The rain had stopped, but dark clouds still hung ominously overhead. Majestically, the large 40-foot high cart moved down Walnut Street. By the time it reached 11th Street, Srila Prabhupada had gotten out of his car 2 blocks away and was walking toward Lord Jagannatha. A large group of devotees surrounded Prabhupada, and the devotees on the cart could see him approaching. The two groups joined, and the kirtana swelled. Standing before the cart now, Srila Prabhupada got down on his hands and knees and touched his head to the road in obeisance to Lord Jagannath. This cart was the best yet, Prabhupada said. He especially liked the large, strong wheels, ornately decorated with the small, round and diamond-shaped mirrors. Mounting the cart, he took his seat beneath the deities, and for the first time in days, the clouds parted and the sun shone through. Now people started pouring out of offices and stores. They lined the sidewalks and came out into the road to join the procession. As the cart circled City Hall, the sound of the devotees singing became magnified, echoing off these tall buildings. The crowd was the largest ever at any Philadelphia Rath Yatra. Hecklers, Christian fundamentalists with big banners reading "Get Smart, Get Saved," and "Repent or Burn" were ineffectual amid the large crowd and the uproarious kirtana. At one point, when Srila Prabhupada appeared particularly satisfied, a devotee on the cart leaned over and asked Srila Prabhupada what he thought of the festival. Prabhupada replied that he was thinking the American Vaishnavas were now permanently in the West. The park behind the art museum was crowded with people waiting. Srila Prabhupada took his seat on stage and began lecturing over the public address system. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I wish to thank you, the inhabitants of this great city, Philadelphia. You are so kind and enthusiastic in taking part in this movement. So, I am very much obliged to you. I am especially obliged to the American boys and girls who are helping me so much in spreading this Krishna consciousness movement in the Western countries. Prabhupada explained how all living entities are eternal, but having taken material bodies are subject to the tribulations of birth, death, disease, and old age. In the human form, the soul can choose to go back to the spiritual world or to suffer birth after birth in the material world. But why should we remain in this material body and undergo repetition, change of body? Prabhupada asked, let us have our original spiritual body that is wanted, that is intelligent. Prabhupada explained the science of chanting Hare Krishna and invited everyone to try it. We don't charge anything for this Hare Krishna mantra, he said. We are chanting everywhere. As you saw in this Rath Yatra, our only means is chanting Hare Krishna, and these thousands of men are following. Simply by chanting Hare Krishna mantra, so you can understand what is the potency of this Hare Krishna mantra. We did not pay you, ladies and gentlemen, anything to follow us, but we simply chant Hare Krishna. So it's very potent. You will never feel tired chanting Hare Krishna. You see, practically, you can go on chanting 24 hours. You will never feel tired. Therefore, it is said, Golokera Prema Dhana. This chanting vibration is coming from the spiritual world. Srila Prabhupada talked about the inner meaning of Ratha Yatra. Radharani is meeting Krishna at Kurukshetra and trying to bring him back to Vrindavana. It is very ecstatic feeling, he said. Those who are advanced devotees, they can enjoy. Concluding his address, he invited everyone to look at the Krishna conscious literature and try to understand. The devotees had prepared 1200 pounds of halwa and large quantities of vegetables, sweets, and fruit punch, which they very efficiently served to the crowd. Prabhupada was satisfied with everything and returned to his house while the devotees continued until sunset, feasting, chanting, and hosting thousands of festival goers. The first day, sorry, the day after Ratha Yatra, Srila Prabhupada met with a room full of people, including two reporters and several parents of his disciples. The reporters were Miss Sandy Nixon, a freelance writer, and from the Philadelphia Inquirer, Miss Jones, the same woman who had spoken with Srila Prabhupada at the airport. Seeing japa beads around Miss Nixon's neck, Prabhupada said, "She's a devotee." She was chanting. Miss Nixon said she was writing a book on the popular gurus and had about 15 questions to ask Srila Prabhupada. "I'm going to ask you questions," she said, "and most of the time I might be able to answer them myself." Srila Prabhupada seemed to like her, if only because she wore the japa beads, but some of the devotees flinched at her remark about already knowing the answers to the questions she was about to ask. "How did Krishna consciousness develop?" Miss Nixon asked. "Krishna consciousness is already there in everyone's core of heart," replied Srila Prabhupada. "You have seen how during the whole procession they were chanting and dancing in ecstasy. So do you think that is artificial? No, artificially nobody can chant and dance for us together. That means the awakening of Krishna consciousness." Srila Prabhupada patiently and carefully answered each question about Christ, about gurus, about the daily lives of the devotees. While discussing the evils of godless society, he mentioned the slaughter of cows. "It is an innocent animal," he said. "It is simply eating grass given by God and supplying milk. And from milk we can live. And the gratefulness is cut her throat. Is that civilization? What do you say?" I agree 100%. Miss Nixon replied. "I want you to say these things instead of me. I am asking the questions for others, of course, who do not understand Krishna consciousness." Again, the devotees flinched. That Prabhupada did not always respond to a person's attitude or nuance did not mean that he was imperceptive. He sometimes chose not to relate to a certain idiom or react to a certain foolishness, like Miss Nixon's claims to be an expert on Krishna consciousness. And often he simply ignored a person's trivial conversation or mundane philosophy. But he was always in touch with whomever he talked to, addressing that person's true self-interest. He knew Miss Nixon didn't know the answers to the questions she asked, and he understood that she was, despite her temporarily donned japa beads, not inquiring as a submissive disciple. Nevertheless, he was compassionate, answering to enlighten both her and her readers. Miss Nixon plunged onward. "How do you feel about women's lib?" Prabhupada remained silent, and a devotee reported, "She wants to know about the women's liberation." "What is your feeling about women's liberation?" "That I don't want to discuss," said Srila Prabhupada, because Srila Prabhupada's serious expression slowly changed to a smile, and then he laughed. Everyone laughed. His Chicago remarks were famous. On the one hand, he didn't want to start another controversy. But he did not want to clear up the issue. He continued, as you have asked, so I may explain how the foolish women are being cheated by the intelligent men. In your country, they have given you liberty. Liberty means equal rights. Is it not? Man and woman have equal rights. Miss Nixon, they are trying in this country. Prabhupada, all right, trying. But you women, you cannot see that this so-called equal rights means cheating the women. Now, I say more clearly that a woman and man meet. Now they become lovers. Then they have sex. And the woman becomes pregnant. And the man goes away. The simple woman, she has to take charge of the child and beg for government arms. Please give me money. This is your independence. So you admit this is independence? Or she tries to kill the child. Do you think it's very good independence? What is your answer? Srila Prabhupada looked challengingly at both women. They had asked their questions. Now he was asking, Miss Jones, what is my answer to whether or not I was going to kill a child? Is that the question? Prabhupada, yes, they are killing now, abortion. Miss Jones, well, she has made the choice. Prabhupada, you have made your choice to kill your child. Is that a very good choice? Miss Nixon, it's the worst crime you could make. Srila Prabhupada to Miss Jones. Do you think it's very good business? Miss Jones, I think it's a very complicated question. Prabhupada, therefore, I say they are cheating you in the name of independence that you do not understand. They are cheating you and you are thinking you are independent. Miss Nixon, they forget the responsibility that comes with the freedom. Prabhupada, yes, the men, do not take the responsibility. They go away. They enjoy and go away. And the woman has to take the responsibility, either kill the child or maintain begging. Do you think begging is very good? In India, although they are poverty stricken, still they do not become independent. They remain under the care of the husband and he takes all responsibility. She has neither to kill the child nor to beg for maintaining the child. So which is independence? To maintain under a husband is independence or to become free to be enjoyed by everyone? There is no freedom, but still they think they have freedom. That means under some plea, the men are cheating the women. That's all. So in the name of independence, they have agreed to be cheated by another class. That is the situation. Prabhupada explained that the Krishna consciousness movement had the highest regard for women. But to protect them from this exploitation by man, he said, we teach that you do like this, you do like that, you be married, be settled up, don't wander independently. We teach them like that. But so far Krishna consciousness is concerned, we equally distribute. There is no such thing that, oh, you are a woman, less intelligent or more intelligent, therefore you cannot come. We don't say that. We welcome woman, man, poor, rich, everyone, because on that platform there is equality. That is equality. Next, Miss Jones began to question. Ever since Srila Prabhupada's arrival in Chicago, she had been noting what she thought was Prabhupada's excessive material opulence. You have said that you are very small, she began, and that you are not God. Yet it appears to me as an outsider that the devotees treat you as if you were God. Prabhupada. Yes, that is devotee's duty. Just like a government officer. Personally, he is not very important. But so long as he executes the government order, he should be respected as the government. That is the way. Even if an ordinary policeman comes, you have to respect him because he is government man. But that does not mean he is respected. If that man thinks I have become government, people are respecting me, then he is foolish. But the etiquette is that When the government man comes, you should give him respect as the God. Miss Jones, I wonder about the many beautiful material things that the devotees bring to you. For instance, when you left the airport, you left in a big, beautiful, fancy car. I wonder about this. Prabhupada, that is teaching them how to respect. If you respect a government man as government, then you must treat him like that. If you respect the spiritual master as God, then you must offer him the facilities of God. Otherwise, how should he treat me as God? Simply in his mind? No, in action also. Miss Jones, I'm sorry. What was that you said? Prabhupada. If the spiritual master is treated as God, so the devotee must practically show how he is treating him as God. God travels by a golden car. So if the spiritual master is offered an ordinary motor car, still it's not sufficient because he has to be treated like God. What is this motor car for God? The devotees laughed at Prabhupada's bold logic. They had never thought of it quite like that. If the Guru is God's representative, then why quibble if he is offered a mere Cadillac of this material world? Prabhupada, they are still deficient. If God comes to your home, will you bring him an ordinary motor car or would you arrange for a golden car? So your point is that they offer me a nice motor car, but I say it is not sufficient. They are still lacking to treat him as God. Be practical. Miss Jones didn't think it was funny. She had another question. Her question became more challenging. Prabhupada explained to her how she must have spiritual vision to see things in their proper perspective. But if you have no eyes, therefore you are envious because they have offered me a nice motor car. So you have to make your eyes to see. A blind man cannot see. The eyes are to be treated. How to see? Miss Jones had one more question. One of the most difficult things to understand in Krishna consciousness, she said, was the deities. How could someone brought up in the West accept that the deities represented God? Srila Prabhupada first explained that the spiritual soul within the body was the real self. Therefore, he said, you cannot see the spirit, so you cannot see the supreme spirit or God. But to show his kindness upon you, he has appeared just like wood or stone, so that you can see. The two reporters were finished with their questions, and they thanked Prabhupada, who then turned his attention to others in the room. When a father of one of the devotees mentioned that he himself professed no religion, Srila Prabhupada replied indirectly that the father was therefore a fool. The man admitted it. The mother, however, was more spiritually inclined, and Prabhupada praised her, stating that the son takes on the traits of the mother. Another guest spoke. I would like to ask Swami, would you pray for me? I am praying for everyone. Prabhupada replied softly. That is my business. Otherwise, why have I come here? A woman addressed Prabhupada. As a mother, I too wish to thank you. My daughter Joy has found Krishna consciousness. She has been recommended for initiation tomorrow. Prabhupada. So we recommend everyone. Every American should be initiated. That is our recommendation. The sooner you accept this proposal, it's good for you to know God and love Him. Is there any difficulty? Some have become interested. Why not others? Prabhupada again glanced at the father who claimed to have no religion. Your son is interested, he said. Why the father is not interested? What is the reason? Thus, the evening darshana continued until after a few hours, Prabhupada ended it and distributed prasadam. When the last guest had left, several of the women devotees asked Prabhupada about the actual proposition of his women disciples. He smiled. When a woman becomes Krishna conscious, he said, her brain is automatically bigger. The devotees laughed. As he smiled, his devotees understood him perfectly. Whoever became a devotee, a man or woman, became more intelligent, being transcendental to the issue of men's or women's rights. Prabhupada saw beyond the designations of the body. He saw that the criterion for intelligence wasn't material, one's sex, race, or nationality, but was one's desire for spiritual life. A woman devotee asked Prabhupada a further question about the position of women, and he replied, "Of course, you are not a woman, you are a devotee." Srila Prabhupada agreed to see several professors, acquaintances of Ravindra Swarupas.
Mataji, can you
Yes,
just pause for a
yes,
few minutes?
yes.
Okay. So we see how starting with Chicago and Philadelphia, starting in Philadelphia, then all the way to in Philadelphia, Prabhupada, first he tries to explain the Vedic view of the material body the soul inhabits as a man or woman. What is the difference between the material bodies that the soul inhabits as a body, inhabits in? The soul inhabits the body of a man or the body of a woman. What is the difference between those two bodies? So Prabhupada tries to explain that. So Srila Prabhupada tried to explain that, and they would not get it because there are two different platforms, as Prabhupada says. In fact, there is sensual, emotional, intellectual platforms, and then there is the spiritual platform. So on the spiritual platform, there is no differentiation. Everyone is the same. All spirit souls are the same. But from other platforms, there is a difference. And Prabhupada is trying to explain this difference from the Vedic point of view. So, however, the reporters and others could not understand it. So Prabhupada initially, he said, okay, let's not discuss about this. Let them just chant because they cannot understand the subject matter. So here we see that Miss Jones, or rather it is Miss Nixon, who brought up the question again. And Prabhupada says, I don't prefer to talk on that, but since you've asked, let me answer it. And again, he explains in great detail the difference on the material platform. What we notice here consistently is Prabhupada either tries to represent the Vedic teachings faithfully, or he prefers not to speak at all. But you don't find Srila Prabhupada at any point trying to water down the Vedic philosophy and Vedic view of things and trying to come up with some concoction. Prabhupada doesn't do that. Prabhupada firmly sticks by the Vedic understanding of things, or he prefers not to speak at all. If he speaks, he will speak the exact Vedic understanding of the difference in the bodies that the souls may inhabit as a man or as a woman. There's a difference in the bodies, and Prabhupada sticks very firmly to the difference between the bodies on the material difference between the bodies. But that is the, you could say, the sensual, emotional, or the intellectual platform. But when it comes to the spiritual platform, he says that everyone is equal. Because everyone is a woman actually in the spiritual platform. Prakriti by definition is a woman. So everybody is equal, all jivas are equal on the spiritual platform, in the sense that everybody has, I mean, although equal, there are differences in the jivas, but in terms of, there's no such thing as superiority and inferiority and things like that. Rather, everybody has the equal right, as the equal facility to advance in Krishna consciousness. So, Prabhupada, what I'm trying to convey is that either he speaks the full and correct Vedic understanding, or he doesn't speak at all. But he does not present a mishmash. He doesn't mince words. He doesn't try to somehow or other placate his audience. He's interested in presenting the Vedic version exactly as it is, to the deed, to any amount, to any extent, uh, as detailed as it may need to be. He's willing to explain it, but he's not willing to uh, bend it or mince his words or mishmash, creates a mishmash understanding. No, he's very clear. Uh, Prabhupada explains things very, very clearly. And the other thing that we observe is that Prabhupada, our whole Krishna consciousness movement, the followers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we believe, not we believe, this is a fact, that our idea is that the greatest gift that we can offer someone is eternal life. The greatest problem is mortality. And so the greatest gift is eternal life. So this Prabhupada also brings up there in the, if we noted earlier in this conversation, Prabhupada brought it up that the greatest gift is the gift of eternity. So that is the permanent solution to all problems in this material world. Any thoughts, any comments, any reflections, any questions?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, I have one small this one. Like now, Prabhupada said that like women are if they are chaste and they are learning, they will find a nice husband for them, like that and all. Now, but sometimes what happens now, even in ISKCON, we have seen that they take up sannyasa. We have seen in Prabhupada's time they have taken sannyasa, and their wives will be left. So what will be their position and how they live? Because they may not have son or children or like that. So one is that. And another is sometimes what happens is nowadays also they will simply leave and go without any like care, or they don't take responsibility of their family. Even in ISKCON, I'm saying about in ISKCON only, Prabhuji. I'm not telling about outside. And one more thing is that even if they are staying together, there will be abusive things. They will abuse their wives. I have seen that one of all those things, Prabhuji. Just can you just tell those about those things, Prabhuji?
During Prabhupada's time, Prabhupada personally gave sannyas.
Yes, Prabhuji.
So, what was the idea in his mind about how those women would be taken care of?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Uh, I can't comment on it except the fact that during Prabhupada's time, ISKCON was one family. Everybody lived in the temple actually during those days. Most of them, I could say. Only a handful lived outside the temple. So Prabhupada's vision was a large family. So when people are in a joint family, uh, doesn't require very great effort to take care of oneself. But when things become nuclear, as we know, then things become complicated. For example, let's say a woman has a child. Because I grew up in a joint family, I've seen the dynamics. It's very different in nuclear families. Currently, I mean, I'm in a nuclear family, but I didn't grow up in a nuclear family. I live with my wife and children. Of course, now my parents have moved in their old age to Vaibhava. But otherwise, generally, most part of our lives, married life, we have lived as a nuclear family. That's very different from life in a joint family. In a joint family, let's say a woman has a child, there are so many ladies who can take care of the children, so many ladies to cook. So that's how I was brought. I mean, when during my childhood, I've seen that happen. So the women don't feel very burdened by the responsibility of married life. So, and generally, there is a good camaraderie between the women, and yeah, they have a lot of things to do. So, Prabhupada's during Prabhupada's time, we had ISKCON as one big family. Although there were difficulties, devotees had also would fight among themselves. Those things were there, but still, the concept of a large family did exist. Uh, I don't know if that was the reason why Prabhupada gave men sannyas who are young and who had wives. I mean, especially Tamal Krishna Maharaj
Yes.
was one incident.
Yes.
So I don't know what Prabhupada's rationale was, but the fact that he was a pure devotee and he knows exactly what is the right thing to do in every circumstance. So we take it that he did the right thing. Now, everybody is not Prabhupada, especially after Prabhupada's disappearance. Um, so what the GBC has done is that currently no man can take sannyas without the written, expressed, written consent of his wife. So even to be on the sannyas list, you need that expressed, written consent of one's wife. So that's taken care of in that sense, which is a good thing because nobody is Prabhupada. So one cannot uh, do things exactly in the same manner that Prabhupada did in these areas, not in the other area. Some areas you can't do things exactly like the way he did because you have to be more careful. We cannot claim, we have to be more careful. We cannot claim to have the same authority and discretion as Srila Prabhupada. Okay, that's first question. The second question was about men leaving and leaving their responsibility and men abdicating their responsibility. They should not be entertained or encouraged to do that in any manner. In fact, there should be restrictions on men trying to abandon responsibilities. Not just men. I mean, in general, anybody who's abandoning or abdicating their responsibilities should be corrected. Now, the correction does not necessarily mean only through punishment. Corrections, there are many ways to correct people. The best way to correct people is by good examples. And if nothing works, then they have to be punished. Or yeah. So whether we are doing that in ISKCON, I think to a very small extent, hardly satisfactory. Then I mean, in the sense that, yeah, I mean, you could say in some places it's happening well, in other places it's not. So if you take ISKCON as a whole, then we have a lot of work to do in that regard. Third thing is about abusive husbands. Yes, they should be corrected also. So that's an area that we need to work on also. That what should be done where the husbands are abusive. Conversely, even though it may not be overwhelmingly the majority, but I've seen instances where I've physically seen instances where the wife slaps the husband and the husband doesn't know what exactly is to be done. Anyway, I mean, that may not be the majority, but nevertheless, those things do happen. So uh, any kind of relationship where there is an abuse, whether it is by the man or even if it is by the woman, these things need to be corrected. So we can't just ignore everything in the name of bhakti and say, okay, bhakti will purify. Yes, bhakti will purify, but along with the power of bhakti to purify, it is also our responsibility to institute measures to ensure that the correction happens.
Yes, but just I wanted to know how the women should act or behave and what should be their, like how they should lead their life, like how it, because when husband leaves and goes or he's abusing, it will be difficult for them to, because they have to, like it's really difficult to live in ISKCON single-handedly, like if they have the children with all these things. So how they should take on it or how they should lead their life. See, sometimes, yeah, there will be some older people who can give guidance or this one, but sometimes it doesn't work out or doesn't happen like that.
See, actually, I think that there's no generic answer to these questions.
Okay.
Each case is different.
Yes.
For example, um, uh, Okay, let me just give you a typical. I mean, see, why I'm saying this is because it's very different. You have to see the circumstances. Each situation is very different. So, some time ago, we got to know about a devotee couple, and so who's the man in the house, the husband. These are both initiated devotees. The husband was sexually abusing his daughter, who's a minor. Now, uh, first of all, he did not acknowledge it. Of course, it was reported to the CPO and things like that. And so, in that circumstance, uh, of course, we knew in great detail about that situation when it came to our attention. So we advised the woman that your husband uh, needs to be. It's a very serious problem. This is a very serious problem. It needs to be. I mean, it's unfair on the daughter if this man is not seriously dealt with. But the woman said, "No, I want to keep my marriage together." So we said, "No, what can we do about it? I mean, we can't help you anymore. That's it. End of story." So I mean, if the woman wants to keep the marriage together, which is a priority over ensuring that her daughter is not harmed anymore. Of course, I mean, she doesn't want her daughter to be harmed, but then if her priority is to keep the marriage somehow, then we told them we can't help her. No, I mean, because this is something very serious. It has to be dealt with very seriously. This has very strong implications. So what do you do? That's why I said that uh, you're asking a very generic question. So here you find a husband who is abusive, but and the woman is angry, definitely very angry, but doesn't want to. I mean, doesn't want to keep the marriage together at any cost. Okay, that what can be done? So that's why I said that every individual situation is unique. So there is no generic answer to these questions. But the point is that whenever there is a situation which is where things are abusive or detrimental or against the teachings of Srila Prabhupada, the previous acharyas, and scripture, then it needs to be corrected. So I'll just give you a generic answer, and we need to uh, do. I mean, we need to do a lot of work in that area. Of course, ISKCON is doing some work in that area, but we need to do a lot more.
Yes. Thank you.
Prabhu, can
So
I ask you?
every situation
sorry.
is unique. Yeah. Yes, Prabhu. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Sorry, it's been some time we haven't spoken. So a lead-on question from what you've just answered. I've seen these instances, sort of where ISKCON's made statements and public statements on these sort of abuse issues, particularly when they're senior devotees in question, etc. Is it how does this work? I mean, presumably there is the legal framework must override ISKCON's desire to deal with this stuff. I mean, if there's, for instance, if there's child abuse happening, it is ISKCON's responsibility to report that instance to the authorities, not to try and deal with it, and for the legal framework to also kick in. Isn't that a legal requirement?
Yeah, that's true. That's correct. That's correct. So, see, there are situations where what do you call the statute of limitations. For example, as far as I know, in India, any sexual offense against minors that have occurred before 2012 cannot be what do you call it? Cannot be taken up. So therefore there is one. Some countries have different laws like that. Now, apart from this, let's say so right now, let's say in India, if an authority in ISKCON has knowledge of something, it is his duty to report to the police station. There's no exemption to that. I mean, that which happens also, which has happened even in recently in the devotee community where I live in. But there are circumstances, like I don't know how the particular instance which I was talking about did not happen in India. It is in a foreign country. So I don't know what the rules are. Like, how do they take cognizance of some third-party reporting without the mother herself complaining? These are very, because she didn't want to go to the legal system, as far as I know, because we left off that case at a certain point, because I don't know what further she did about it, but whether she went to the legal system or whether it's mandated, whether CPO is mandated by law. Like some, for example, in India, even if a third party reports, they're supposed to take it seriously. Some countries, unless the parent themselves report, I don't know if it's taken as legitimate, legitimate complaint legally. So there are, there are different rules and regulations, but in different countries. But in principle, yes, wherever there is a possibility for ISKCON to report it legally, they are duty bound to report, and it must be done.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Where
There may be differences.
Take for example, the places where ISKCON, I mean, a third party cannot report, only the parent or whatever, then what? Still, ISKCON has a responsibility towards these people, right? So therefore, ISKCON can have its own, even if they don't get into investigation or whatever, they can impose some suitable restrictions to prevent these kind of, based on a prima facie reading of the situation or whatever internal work they can do to ensure that the person who's abusing is not a threat to the community. So ISKCON has every right to do that, especially in the absence where the parent, either it's a man or the woman, whoever doesn't want to take it to the legal system, then ISKCON still has a responsibility to ensure that our communities are safe. Yes, Prabhu, you were saying something.
Yeah, I was just saying. I mean, I guess you're right. It's probably varies from country to country. For instance, here in the West, any organization, if they become aware of any form of abuse, it is imperative that they report it to the authorities, and leave it for the authorities to investigate. And regardless of whether there is any reporting or not, if there is any suspicion of abuse going on, it has to be reported. And conversely also, sorry, not conversely is the wrong word, but similarly also, there is no statute of limitation with respect to criminal activity. There is in civil pursuits, but if there is a crime that's been committed, at any point that crime is still reprehensible and pursuable for the lifetime of the individual. So even if you committed a crime, okay, there's some differences between minors and, if you committed a crime when you were a minor and then you became then the treatment of that, if it was found that the crime was done when he was a minor, then the treatment might be different in terms of how it's dealt with. But regardless of the fact that if it's a criminal act, it stays live for the lifetime of the individual. You can't hide behind a statute of limitation if it's criminal.
Yeah. One more problem, which I've seen that has come up in some discussions is the problem that, for example, how do you, let's say, I don't know how the different laws in different countries are, but then there are places where this kind of complication comes up, where if the abuse has not happened in an ISKCON campus, and how do you define organization, institutional membership? So is it that if an ISKCON member, you can always take is within measures within institution, but to report it to a law enforcing agency, do all countries, does the person have to be a member of the institution officially? How is membership defined? Or do you have the right, moment you come to hear of something, you have to report, you can report to the police? Do you have the right to do that? The sense that, okay, even without the involved parties reporting it to the police, so involved in the sense of the affected parties informing to the police. So there are some of these complexities which come up in some countries. So In
I
general,
guess the overpowering responsibility is one of moral obligation. If one is
yeah. So
aware, regardless if it's a member or not, the moral obligation
exactly,
is imperative.
exactly. No, in the sense that like, for example, let's say, I mean, I don't know the nuances and the details of this, but let's say in a country where okay, let's forget about institutions for that matter. Like, do countries permit, okay, if you have knowledge of some incident, not you're not a witness though, you have a knowledge of some incident, and then can you report it without the affected parties ever reporting it, and is that permissible by law? That's another complexity which comes up in certain legal jurisdictions. So anyway, irrespective of all that, the moment ISKCON authorities come to know of something, it is their responsibility to act by the law. They cannot defy the law in the name of spirituality, or in the name of seniority of the person involved, in the name of compassion, or whatever. In the name of anything, they cannot circumvent the law. That I'm very of the firm opinion that they should act within the parameters of law. And if the parameters of law do not permit them to take legal action about it, then at the very least they should take institutional action with regard to those people. There is no excuse for not taking at least an institutional action where a legal action may not be possible.
So maybe you can just help, because this is one, without taking names particularly. I mean, it's not that it's a secret; it's public domain stuff. But ISKCON released a statement regarding a particular sannyasi that was banished from the organization for child abuse, and I'm just wondering why it was only a matter dealt by the ISKCON authorities, and why it wasn't made into it's a public prosecution issue.
That's what I was trying to explain to you.
Was that the statute of limitation issue?
Yeah, exactly. All the alleged, all the reported and alleged this thing happened prior to 2012.
Okay.
So there was a statute of limitation according to Indian law. What to do? That's what it is.
Okay.
And but
I thought it was an internal decision not to.
No. Subsequently, subsequently there have been other incidents which were reported because of the Ishtagoshtis and other things that happened post that scenario, and they were ISKCON authorities themselves reported to the police, and one devotee was arrested by the police and put in jail. So it has happened in the sense that because there was awareness of it, that it is, it can be that anything beyond after 2012 can be prosecuted by law. There were others who came up, and in every such instance, ISKCON mandatorily reported it to the law enforcing agencies.
Thank you. Just moving slightly away from a rather depressing discussion, something a little lighter. We've just last couple of weeks or so, we've been celebrating the 50th anniversary of Shri Radha Gokulananda Mana's installation at the Bhaktivedanta Manor. So we had a festival of 3 days and a deluge of Prabhupada disciples here for 3 days of festivals and lots of functions and lots of discussions by them, giving recounts. And it was such a unique opportunity where we had 30 Prabhupada disciples, numerous sannyasis who descended here for the function, and for them to hear firsthand their experiences and their interactions with Prabhupada and Prabhupada's, the whole scenario of how everything happened was just very nectarian. It was what we're reading 10 times more magnified, because they were all giving us this nectar personally with their personal recollections, and each interacting with each other and say, "Do you remember that? Well, I don't remember you being there." And it was really nectarian. It was quite was quite a profound experience, a once in a lifetime experience to have experienced. Because I think I certainly in my lifetime, I don't think we'll see so many Prabhupada disciples all at once, all reminiscing about that particular period of their life with Srila Prabhupada and how it all. It was quite a magical moment. So I think whenever we have the opportunity to interact with these individuals that have had firsthand relationships with and experiences of Prabhupada, we must try and extract that and relish that. And I think, as you've pointed out several times, sort of Yadava Prabhu's attempts of trying to chronologize all of these and put all of the footages in the public domain is a huge. It'll be a huge asset for this movement going 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years forward, because these things will be then immortalized. So thank you for running these sessions, Prabhu. They are really nectar.
You're very fortunate to have had that opportunity to associate with all of them and drink the nectar of Prabhupada's pastimes.
It was nectar. It was just pure nectar. Those 3 days of really they were just very nectar. So it was marking basically they were installed on Janmashtami from a Vedic Tithi perspective, so that's still to come. But the observation of the festivals were done according to the calendar date as well. So obviously, Janmashtami coming, i.e., in 3-4 days' time, will be the Tithi celebrations, but the calendar date celebrations went 2 weeks ago. So very, very, very nice. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing this. When hearing about it is enlivening.
Hare Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
This was now what Prabhu said. This is the same thing which I was talking last week, where different disciples have kind of told the same comments over in the YouTube videos. Their days with Prabhupada at various times.
Siddhanta Das,
But
right?
individually.
Siddhanta Prabhu. Yeah, Siddhanta Prabhu's memory series, I guess.
I think it is just not one Prabhu. I think 2-3 groups have done this Prabhu, various.
No, actually, the interviews have also been transcribed into books. It's called memories. They're available in book format also. Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3 I've seen so far. 3 volumes I've seen so far. Probably more volumes are going to come out, but these interviews are also transcribed into books. Siddhanta Prabhu. Okay. It's called Memories.
Yeah, basically, I don't think it's much about the teachings of Prabhupada while it comes here and there, but it's more of the experiences of the respective disciples with Prabhupada.
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I just wanted to then coming back to that topic again. Prabhuji, is there any forum or anything in ISKCON where like these Matajis, they can report about all these things, their abuses or their difficulties or something like that, or only they have to do in their temple level or something like that, Prabhuji?
There is no, what do you call it? Of course, you have the women's ministry, but their jurisdictions are very limited though. So jurisdictions are very limited in the sense that, I mean, it is more like they don't have, forget, I'll come to that a little later. The idea is that you have to report it to a local authority. If there is no sufficient action taken, then you have to report it to the next level. And eventually, ultimately, let's say the executive power lies within the local authorities, right? Yeah. So even if you report it to the women's ministry, the women's ministry can apply some pressure, not pressure. What do you call it? Yeah, it can try to talk to the inform the local GBCs to take necessary action in that regard, like that. But in fact, you can yourself write to the local GBC also. I'm not saying you means not you. In
Yeah, but
general, if
yes.
somebody, if the local authorities do not respond, then they can write to the next authority, which is the GBC secretary. And if they don't respond, they can write to the zonal councils. In many countries, you have zonal councils, you have national councils, like that. Whereas, I mean, although the women's ministry exists, but they don't have executive powers in the sense of trying to enforce something. They only can, can try to push the zonal supervisors or zonal secretaries or the local authorities to take some necessary action.
I'm just asking this because what happens sometimes if woman she's not working and she's wholly dependent on her husband, and if he does, like if he leaves and goes, or if he's become like this one, so she has to live alone or something. She won't have any support as such. It'll be very
You mean to say if they
difficult.
take sannyas? You're talking about sannyas?
In whatever may be the case, Prabhuji, whatever may be the case, if sannyas means at least they have to take the permission, written permission. But sometimes what if they simply go away without any taking any responsibility or giving any support or anything. They have some misunderstanding or something, they'll simply leave and go. Otherwise they will become so abusive, which will force the woman to leave or something, to leave separately or like that. At that time she will be really difficult with the, if she's especially having children or anything, to look after them or to support them, or to be in, especially in even in Krishna consciousness. It'll be really it'll become really difficult for them to continue also with all these things. If that's why I'm asking, Prabhuji, if it is something like that,
for example,
we can get support.
Such a husband can be restricted in the temple from whatever, performing whatever services or wherever he travels. That much ISKCON needs to definitely do. But how much they can support the woman, that each local temple would have to do.
Yes, that's what. So even if he's not working, see, if he's working in the temple, they can restrict. But if he's not working in the temple, if he's a congregation person, then it will be really again difficult for the woman to like be in Krishna consciousness to continue, because she will be burdened with so many things. Correct. So that's why it was like just this one.
So I mean, I've always had this idea that there should be stronger measures when it comes to initiating devotees, because it is initiation which confers them the status of being, I don't know, I mean, the membership of ISKCON is not defined, but it is initiation which gives them some identity in terms of ISKCON's membership.
Yes.
Even if they're not formal members, but it gives them some sense of identity. So, what exactly are their, who exactly can be initiated? What are their responsibilities? Of course, in Prabhupada's time, it is very simple: chanting system now, following 4 regulative principles. But in a congregational scenario, it's different. So, what exactly is expected from them? Our constitution is still not done. ISKCON's constitution. Who is a member? Who's not a member? What are the roles? What are the responsibilities? What are the privileges? All these things need to be clearly defined. Until then, it will always remain a gray area. But the minimum thing is that they need to be restricted from participation in ISKCON's activities until they have shown their willingness and they've demonstrated that they have corrected themselves. The restriction depends on to the extent of transgression also.
Yes.
I mean, it's a difficult thing, Mataji, because then you'll have to also have you have ISKCON resolve actually. So then you will have to have. I mean, see, just because it's difficult does not mean it should not be done. These things have to be done on priority. Like there should be people who can grihastha counselors who can try to assess the situation, because sometimes you first of all you need to assess what is the reality. Who's saying? I mean, sometimes there could be just some wild allegations. There's some false allegations. These kind of things can happen also. That I know of a scenario where where uh, where the woman said a woman filed a police complaint and got her husband arrested because she said it openly to her authorities, because she said that this is the only way to get him to give me a divorce. He's saying that I will not give you a divorce. So I had to do this. I had to file a false charge and get him arrested. So what about that? So that's what I'm saying. So sometimes these kind of situations are quite complicated. It needs to be, uh, first of all, somebody has to figure out what actually is going on here. What is the truth? What is not the truth? So you need experienced people. I mean, again, law enforcement agencies there. So these are all areas where ISKCON has not had enough experience. Of course, it may have experienced situations where these things have happened, but ISKCON has not uh, developed enough experience to deal with these situations. It lacks competency to deal with these situations. Therefore, on a priority, the governing body of ISKCON should consider these matters and try to see how all its devotees can be happily situated in Krishna consciousness.
Yes, Prabhu. Because it should be like conducive for them to at least practice their bhakti at least little bit in a proper way than getting burdened with all these problems.
Yes, yes, yes. Like for example, let's say why I said initiation should be so little bit more stringent is like, for example, if a man has a history of abusing his wife, why should he be granted initiation? I'm just saying he should be restricted from getting initiated, right? So like that, there are many things to consider actually.
Yeah, but that doesn't, because they will get initiation before the marriage sometimes, because when they were brahmachari, they'll get initiated and later they will change and they will become grasta.
Yeah,
Same with
yeah.
the, yeah.
I'm not denying that. I'm not saying no, but I'm just saying we don't even have a system where, what do you call it, a man who is, what do you call it, how he's treating his wife is not considered a factor sometimes in initiation, right? Is it a factor? It's not a factor.
Yeah, it's not.
When the temple authorities recommend, is it really a factor? Yeah. So that's why I'm saying that we need to have, uh, okay, let me put it like this. Prabhupada said, the whole problem in this world is that there is no brain in the society. Okay. So if we are going to solve ISKCON's own problems, and if you're going to solve the world's problems, the first thing that ISKCON needs to do, ISKCON needs to get its act together and having Brahmanas first of all. If you don't have the brain in proper functioning order, then you don't have direction about how to do things. So while we expand our preaching and do so many different things, Prabhupada said it's important to boil the milk. So if we can produce very exemplary and very high quality brahmanas, then a lot of the problems that we are encountering can be solved very nicely. I mean, that's the first step. If we don't address the main problem, main solution, then every other solution that we come up with will always have some limitation. The only solution which is comprehensive is to have a set of brahmanas who will give directions. This is how Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, sorry, I got disconnected for a while. I just logged in using mobile data now. Hare Krishna, can you hear me?
Yes, Prabhu, we can hear you.
I don't know what is the last thing that you heard that I said. Indreka Kripa Mataji.
I think, Prabhuji, you told about like
Brahmanas.
yes, Prabhuji. Yeah, there should be brahmanas like unless
Yeah,
there is a head.
unless we have well qualified and high class Brahmanas, Krishna conscious Brahmanas, we won't. That is the actual solution to all the problems. Without that, we are always going to have some. Every problem, every solution that we come up will have some limitations. So the real solution is to have these well trained, well qualified, and high quality Brahmanas who can actually give proper direction. They can figure out how to do things. You may ask how far are we from there? I don't know. But yeah, but this is really a priority. This really needs to be done.
Yes.
Well, I have a slightly related but unrelated question, if that's okay. So regarding long-term devotee care and stuff like that, I know there's a lot of action and talk and discussions going on. We see typically here, at least in the UK, I'm sure it's a similar story across the world, where those early Prabhupada disciples who were very young, who left everything to join the temple, and basically gave their lives to support the foundation and the growth of the movement. When it came to their more senior years, there's really effectively no support network for them. And in particular here, this has become quite prominent and a problem because they see there's a resentment that's started to grow between the white-bodied senior Prabhupada disciples and the Indian-bodied congregation, which now more or less runs the Bhaktivedanta Manor, for instance. I mean, it's a slightly different story in different temples. And there's a growing, sort of distance between the thought process of those. They feel that there's no support network. You guys all had it all given to you on your plate, whilst there's we have no skills, we have no other form of income, and they are suffering. Many of them are suffering. They don't have any forms of income. They don't have any savings. Of course, they were either not being paid or being paid minimum wage whilst they were providing services full time for the temple. So they've come to a point, and that's going to be a consistent problem, not just for that generation, but on an ongoing basis, where those that have given their life in sacrifice to serving at the temple, or even providing services on a salaried basis, that salary is going to be a minimum wage salary with no real pension structure or anything of that sort. When it comes to their retirement age, there's no support framework, and they're left basically out in the cold. And I understand, of course, ISKCON doesn't have unlimited resources to be able to do anything about it either. But there has to be a longer term communal strategy, as you say. If it's one big family, then it, in a joint family, as you said earlier, the younger generation are on a bound to look after the elder generation when it comes to their turn, right? I mean, that's what happens in a joint family. I live in a joint family, and I look after my parents, right? Because that's, they look after me when I was younger, and that's my responsibility to do the same in reverse. Philosophically, there are different issues, of course, vanaprastha and everything else, but just what are you aware of? Because you're well connected in the ISKCON machinery in terms of what the thought processes are on these matters. What is the current thought process on these sort of issues?
Okay. First of all, let me say something apparently outrageous. Okay. So, the word devotee care is a complete speculation. There's no such term used by Srila Prabhupada or any of our acharyas. There's no word called devotee care in equivalent of it. Rather, see, why I'm saying this is because use of language is very important in shaping our consciousness. Like, for example, George Orwell said, language is the defense of the indefensible. So, anyway, I won't get into the details of what he said about the Holocaust, but in general, let's say, if you use the word abortion, that conveys a very brutal sense of the term rather than the word, as they say, MTP. It's called a medical termination of pregnancy. That's what the doctors say. They don't say abortion. You don't find any practicing doctor use the word abortion. They say MTP, medical termination of pregnancy. So which makes it seem very innocuous or innocent or whatever. Not innocent, it's just kind of routine. But you say abortion, oh, abort. So this devotee care is the most speculative, mushy word that has been used in this scum. The term that has been used by Srila Prabhupada and the previous acharyas is Vaishnava Seva, because the moment you say devotee care, a lot of the times it is used in the context of, people tend to feel a sense of superiority in a certain context, not in every context. Like if the context is dealing with juniors or young people, then the devotee care, that word gives a sense of superiority. Okay, I am superior, I need to take care. But in Krishna consciousness, the concept is Vaishnava Seva. You have to serve all Vaishnavas, irrespective of whether they are senior, equal, junior. That concept of Seva, Vaishnava Seva, this is something which pleases Krishna. Jiva Doya, Namaruchi, and Vaishnava Seva. Sarva Dharma Sar, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says. So first of all, we need to change this whole language of devotee care. It's the moment I hear that word, my mind completely shuts down. Because there is no such terminology. I don't know why we have invented a terminology called devotee care. We probably have inherited it from the secular world. But when we have a much stronger and a better terminology called Vaishnava Seva. So if we understand that according to our philosophy, the devotees of the Lord are very dear to the Lord. Therefore, it is very important to please Krishna, to please the devotees. Like Prabhupada says that, what does it mean serving the lotus feet of the Lord? What does it mean? Prabhupada explains in the Bhagavatam. He says serving the lotus feet of the Lord means serving the devotees. He says that. And serving the devotees means trying to serving means doing it in such a manner. Serving does not mean, okay, it's my duty, I do something. No. Serving means you do it in a manner that pleases the devotee. This is called serving. So one should have that concept of that this is a very important service. Seva, Vaishnava Seva, that pleases Krishna. So then people will pay more attention to it, rather than as an obligation. They've served so much years, or these people have come under the care. All that is fine. I'm not saying no, but there is a higher way of looking at it, in the sense of it is a very critical element of our philosophy to serve and please Vaishnavas. Vaishnava Seva is a very core element of our practice of devotional service. It's not like, okay, we do preaching and okay, develop our taste for chanting, preach. We would generally hear about two things. One is chant Hare Krishna, preach the philosophy. That's it. And you're perfect. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur says three things, in fact. He says Namaruchi, Jivadaya, Vaishnava Seva, and Prabhupada also writes about Vaishnava Seva so many times across his Bhagavatam purports, Bhagavad Gita purports. I mean, of course, Chaitanya Charitamrita especially. Other places, Bhagavad Gita may be small, little bit lesser than Bhagavatam and or Chaitanya Charitamrita. But the concept of Vaishnava Seva is critical. So it needs to be, first of all, it cannot be done in an artificial manner because people don't understand what is the value of it. What is okay, why should I take care of some senior devotee? Or why should there's such a big responsibility. This temple presence means such a big headache. So many people have this needs, that needs, and all those kind of things. But if they see it as an opportunity for seva, then there needs to be a paradigm shift. Everything is an opportunity for seva. Everything is an opportunity to please Krishna. So that paradigm shift has to occur by seeing everything as an opportunity of rendering something very dear, rendering a service which is very, very dear to Krishna. Until we affect that change, the value of serving Vaishnavas, the value of someone who has served Vaishnavas. That's what's important. Like for example, why do we regard Prabhupada disciples? Why do we have so much regard for Prabhupada? Is it because they met Prabhupada? Is it because they were more fortunate? Why do we regard them? And what is the reason that we regard them? We hold them in such high regard. It's because they pleased Prabhupada. This is because they pleased Prabhupada. They have served Prabhupada. They have pleased Prabhupada. This is the whole essence of it. So it's not because they happen to be and say they're so fortunate. All that is there, but then the real essence of it is they have served and pleased Srila Prabhupada. So the understanding that in our philosophy, it's a very important, vital element that we need to serve and please Vaishnavas. That understanding has to be really drilled into the consciousness of ISKCON's members. Then we can see it will naturally flow, just like there's an emphasis on chanting and sadhana and then preaching. There needs to be an equal emphasis on Vaishnava Seva, because these three together is what takes us back to, it would make us attain love of God. So all the three elements should be very strongly emphasized. During Prabhupada's time, there is a place where Shyamasundar Prabhu, he falls sick, and he is not taken care of properly. And then Prabhupada gets upset with that. He says, oh, if nobody was there to help you, you should have told me. I would have come and served you. Prabhupada says that. I would have come and served you. If there's nobody to serve you, I would have come and served you. So there are places very strongly where Prabhupada is speaking about the need to serve Vaishnavas. They said Prabhupada writes a letter, they've abandoned everything and they've come and served. They've joined this family of Krishna conscious family. Therefore, it is our important responsibility to serve Vaishnavas who join the Krishna consciousness movement. So I think that where are we at this point in time? I don't know, but definitely that emphasis on Vaishnava Seva has to be placed in a very prominent manner in ISKCON's activities.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, thank you for the explanation. I use the word devotee care only because that's the word that's been bandied about, not because it was a choice word. Because, of course, but without being panicky about whether it's called Vaishnava Seva or devotee care, the underlying purpose is the same in order to care for those senior devotees, which is the Vaishnavas.
No. Actually, why I have a problem with that word devotee care is because there is a certain connotation which comes with that word. It's in the sense that I have seen this happen with in fact, our Caitanya Prabhu had written a very nice article on it. Very, very strong article, very nice article. I'll try to look that up and post it if I can find it, where he speaks very nicely about the word Vaishnava Seva. You cannot go wrong with that word. But with the word devotee care, it can be misused. I mean, not misuse. Yeah, whatever. I don't know if he uses the word misuse, but any case, the idea is that the moment you say care, you are already automatically in your consciousness. You are placing yourself in a position higher than someone else. So the moment the word seva comes in the picture, then you're placing yourself. Not in all contexts, you're placing somebody in superior, but especially when it comes to juniors, you think, okay, I will take care of them. So you're automatically assuming a role which is superior to them. You are only in a position of rendering a certain kind of seva to them. You're not in a superior position, actually speaking. I mean, according to our philosophy. Anyway, so that's why I objected to that word devotee care, not because you had any wrong understanding of it. I think that the word should be removed from our ISKCON lexicon. But in any case, that's the reason that I said it, not because I had any feeling that you are not using it properly.
No, I know. As I said, that's the word that we hear in this context, so I just repeated it. But my question remains, forgive me, unanswered, in that you've very rightly articulated so eloquently that Vaishnava Seva is critical because it is central to what Krishna pleases Krishna. Sort of Vaishnava Seva is the topmost node bhakti seva, right? I mean, it is Vaishnava Seva, Vaishnava Seva, Vaishnava Seva is repeated central in all our teachings. However, what is actually being done about it is what I was asking. What are there any plans in material terms to actually execute upon that very critical philosophical understanding?
Yes, they have a devotee care committee, which was the initiative of the strategic planning team. Gauranga Prabhu and others are involved in it.
Vaishnava Seva committee.
Yeah, it's called. Sorry, it's not Vaishnava Seva, devotee care committee.
No, I was teasing you.
Yeah. So that's what it is officially called as, and they produce some manuals. And at this point, my personal opinion is that I've not seen any. I mean, of course, there has been a lot of brainstorms and this thing, but I have not seen any practical. Except individual temples doing different things for their devotees, I've not seen a large global kind of step towards it. In Mayapur, there is a plan to have a retirement village where devotees who have served in our movement for many years can come and stay here peacefully, and they'll be taken care of fully. So that is the one practical thing. But apart from that, I think that from whatever I understand, the devotee care committee has done some very good work. Because I've seen some of their work, but I don't know how is it going to go from point A to point C, let me say, because there has to be the intermediate steps, how to make that into a reality, right? That I don't know, because I've not seen it. I've not seen that happening. Which can definitely happen, because a lot of work has gone into it. So what exactly are the steps? I need to find out.
Thank you, Prabhu. Sorry for distracting further.
It has mainly remained as a local initiative, which I guess probably also it will remain like that. It may not, they will not have some global this thing for it, but rather it could be like how you could have these people on the committee going to different temples and speaking about it and trying to encourage devotees and trying to follow up with them. That kind of, there was some effort in that direction, but I don't know how far it's gained momentum and how far it's gone, because ultimately it's local. You can't really, except in Mayapur, you could have a retirement village, but otherwise, most devotees prefer to, these things can happen only on a local level, because how are you going to have a global initiative, except in terms of direction and encouragement, rather than some kind of an executive system?
So my penny's worth on this is that if you have any say in any of this. If you have any space, all I would suggest is that it is, as you pointed out several times, and I've repeated, that it is central to our philosophy. Vaishnava Seva is a central characteristic that must exist within the movement. If it doesn't exist, then the movement is null and void. Right? I mean, it is central to everything. Right? So as it's central, it has to be an edict to every local center that this is the framework that you have to implement. Yeah, okay, the implementation may be local because of, but the impetus and the framework for that impetus and the ruling for that must be a GBC responsibility. For instance, I mean, give you an idea, right? Okay, of this temple's income, 10% must be set aside for this particular Vaishnava Seva activity, or whatever it is. It must be an edict that has to be made mandatory for execution at the local level. I'm not suggesting that it has to be one big mega fund, run by ISKCON Mayapur or ISKCON Vrindavan, wherever it is that one may see the heart and soul of ISKCON, but the GBC needs to be able to take the responsibility of this as a central issue, and then edict upon it.
Yes, there are. I mean, this is a good point, which I think I did not articulate it as well as you. So this is the idea, actually, when I say that they have formulated some things, but they have not turned them into edicts yet. But if you ask me, I think almost 70 to 80% of the work is done. So there may be some loose ends to be tied up and a few things to be worked on. But I mean, this thing is that edicts would come. Edicts would come, definitely, because a lot of work has already happened in that direction, like setting aside and things like that. Those kind of things have already been discussed.
Thank you. Sorry for distracting the class away from.
No, I think that's a good question. It's a good question. I mean, I focused on the word and the concept rather than the question of yours. So anyway, if you finally brought it back to the question, and yes, edicts are important, and it is coming. When, I don't know, but I do know that 70 to 80% of the work is done because I've seen a lot of it. Okay. So if there are no further questions, I think we have, there's one of these sessions where we have extended beyond our time because of the interesting nature of the discussions. So we'll resume again next Sunday. Thank you all very much for joining. Vanchakalpatarubhyasya kripasindhubhyo paritanam pavanebhyo vaishnavyo namo namaha. Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande.